you and I are in a double trap, because not only do we lose by taking our money someplace else and spending it, when we try and spend it in our own community, we're trapped because we haven't had sense enough to set up stores and control the businesses of our community. The man who's controlling the stores in our community is a man who doesn't look like we do. He's a man who doesn't even live in the community. So you and I, even when we try and spend our money in the block where we live or the area where we live, we're spending it with a man who, when the sun goes down, takes that basket full of money in another part of the town. So we're trapped, double trapped, triple trapped. Anywhere we go, we find that we're trapped. And every kind of solution that someone comes up with is just another trap.
Level up, level up, level up. What up, everybody? Welcome back to Talk 1000 Podcast Radio. It's your host, it's your boy JX Phantom. The revolution will not be televised, it will now be heard. I want to talk now about a new threat happening in our society today. And for a lot of you who personally know me, this has nothing to do with race. A lot of people have mistaken my attitude for this idea that I think the world is racist. Never once in my entire lifetime have I ever felt that way about anyone in the world, unless they have given me a reason to that spans beyond anything else that would make sense. For instance, if you're a nice person and you do nothing but try to be good to people and people still judge you and hate you, a lot of times that's not really also based on race. It's also based on the idea that other people are saying things behind your back about you. So when people who don't even know you act awkwardly around you or towards you, and they so happen to be white and you are black in a predominantly white community, you are going to have no other choice but to understand only the rational fact of white people in a white neighborhood against this one black person is acting awkwardly towards this one black person. This looks racist. And this is one thing I stress to a lot of white people in predominantly white communities, is that it doesn't matter if your intent is based on control or whatever the case may be. You have to understand that it still looks bad. You have to, just like we in our communities have to take responsibility when we see other races coming into the community, to accept them for who they are and not immediately judge them. You also have that same responsibility. This is why people still argue about the fact, the pure fact, the study that white privilege still exists. We are still not completely free because we are still enslaved, all of us, completely in our minds, whether you're black, white, green, red, or plaid. And again, this podcast is about realism, the truth, the gritty truths that most people don't want to hear. But the only way to fix our society is something we can't depend on the president to do. The only way to fix our society and make America great again is to push the subjects forward, is to push the real problems that are actually happening, that are causing the destruction of our country forward, even though you fear these subjects, so that we can all come together and have an agreement. This is why, as I said before in the last segment, podcasting is becoming the number one thing now. And you got people like Roseanne even coming out and becoming very popular podcasters because they have seen a part of society that is not right. There was an era in there was a time in the COVID situation where there were several commercials about it being okay not to be okay. And the reason why this was happening is because people were fully aware that this sickness and people staying indoors for as long as they were was going to awaken some bad tendencies in people. A lot of people cannot handle being indoors by themselves for long periods of time. So they started putting these commercials out because people ended up having to see therapists. and having to see people because they got to a point where often they found themselves talking to themselves and trying to communicate and, trying to find some way to have some type of normality of what they were used to in life. You see, so you have to understand this new threat is very psychological. You have to understand that this new threat is something so profound in our day and age, and everything evolves, and that includes the bad. The good evolves along with the bad. And you have to understand that what's happening in society right now is not just a racial issue. It's not just because all of this thing about racism is actually psychological to begin with. Most of what's going on right now is psychological warfare. It's psychological warfare. So once you understand that, you understand that there really is no racism. It's purely and strictly all psychological. Once you understand that, you are the type of person who now doesn't look at the grass on the surface like everyone else in the other percentage of society, aka the 99, but you are one of the few people who see the seed underneath the dirt with the water that is beneath the grass that is above the surface, and thus when people are coming at you, it's always with something that's surface level. You being the type of person who might be able to see through all of that right away and talk the root of the problem in the snap of your fingers, you are still dealing with people in society, or Gen Z, so to speak, the same generation that has where everybody's saying that has the attention span of a fish, which I've actually witnessed myself on very, very many, several occasions. You are starting to see that a lot of people who are only looking at surface level things will not be able to connect with you right away on what you're saying, because you're already seeing the root of the problem ahead of the one who's still only been taught to look at the surface. It's the same thing as saying, see with your heart and not with your eyes. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of people are basically doing that. They're going by what they hear. They're going off of simply what they see. People, one thing I want to stress first of all is I challenge everything in society. I question everything, because the way that things are going, if you've been watching, on TV and the news, things are not going very well. The sun is not shining for America. So clearly the laws, the values, the trends that they've put out for you to believe in don't actually work. This is common sense. The problem with society is this lack of common sense. And because of that, there is this new threat. This threat is based on getting grubby hands on your brain. Okay? And it's not just the media anymore. This has gone from within, which would be the media, Hollywood, and things I talked about in the earlier segment, in the first segment. This is the stuff that I was talking about that comes from within and then expands all around to the people. Things that started in Hollywood and the trend setting and the influences and the negativity behind the scenes of Hollywood now expanding all about, because people are now acquiring the same type of mind state as Hollywood, while at the same time will never be able to get in those doors no matter what kind of talent they have, again, as I said in earlier segments. So now, that being a result, you have to understand that vastly our society, much like certain trends, like certain slang words and terms, has become virally infected. Not even affected, but just infected with very non-prolific, very discriminatory, very de-evolved ideas that very much separate themselves from the evolution that the Generation X of the 90s was obtaining. And for those of you who were in the 90s, who are 90s kids, aka 80s babies, who are watching the generations change for the worse now, you understand exactly what I'm talking about, because you were there when the whole mess began. And it took a lot of people a long time to realize that our influences that were telling us this is the way to be, this is where to go, were really the dark truths of our lack of understanding and unity in this country. Some people wanted to teach you right through mass media, but then a lot of them ended up falling off, ended up disappearing, ended up dead, ended up having accidents. Yeah, it's almost like Kennedy. You do something right, you're gonna get you. You know what I'm saying? Lincoln, you do something right, they're gonna get you. Pac, you do something right, they're gonna get you. There's a new threat. It's a similar threat that used to happen to mainly only high influences back before the internet really hit the way that it did in this generation. And that new threat has several names. And a lot of it is based off of what people understand as conspiracy. Now, before I really get into what conspiracy is, you have to understand that conspiracy isn't just some government thing. This isn't something we're talking about on, some network on USA or something like that. You have to understand what the definition of conspiracy is. The definition of a conspiracy is groups of people coming to, and it doesn't have to be the government, it can be regular everyday people, groups of people coming together to form a plot of a certain type against one individual. And it doesn't mean that you work for the government. It just means that you are a group of people who are doing something that you don't want publicized against one individual. Understand where I'm coming from? Okay. So, this threat pretty much works very much the same way. And what prompted this particular segment of Talk 1000 is that I've seen myself and a lot of my brothers and sisters in a day and age where everyone in the world thinks racism is pretty much dead. And trust me, a lot of people think racism is dead because anytime I talk about racial injustices I suffer, I get that, white people especially roll their eyes, oh, this again and that again, but they never, and the whole time never actually having seen what I'm telling them is happening. In an age where people, it's just easy for them to lie. So clearly, in an age where everyone can easily lie and get their way, they're gonna think you know different, especially subconsciously in an era where black people are getting looked at a certain way when you watch the TV. We're drug dealers, we're gangbangers, we're loud, we're obnoxious, but remember one thing, it's that loudness that got Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all of these guys in our black history where they're at. Our loudness is genetic. It is genetic because of all the shit we've been through over the last 400 years. It's basic evolution. It's just like how Cro-Magnon man evolved into us, the human being. You see what I'm saying? But it's a psychological and spiritual state of genetic evolution. It is in your nature as Caucasian people to have a subconscious fear of the black man. That is not to say that that's not to be ashamed of. That is realistic. That's not to be ashamed of. Ignorance is ignorance, but you also have to understand what ignorance means. It's not an insult. Ignorance simply means that you are lacking the understanding in something that could be very basic to understand. And a lot of Caucasians, white people in this day and age, when we talk about these subjects, they turn their heads. You might get a group of black people talking in a restaurant. White people will start putting on headphones. They don't want to hear it. They're running away from the subject, and this is why it hasn't ever been fixed. Because white privilege means that even though you have the privilege to put a black man under arrest, as much as you have the privilege to tell other white people that this black man is loud and obnoxious, you still also have the same privilege that when you see he is being actually discriminated against, to say something about it too. If you are the racist person that you claim you are, when you see one of us suffering from any type of injustice, big or small, you should be standing for that in an era where Black Lives Matter completely failed, and this is why Black Lives Matter failed, guys. Black Lives Matter wasn't even a real movement. I don't know if a lot of you are doing your studies. I'm a very smart person. But being in a black smart person in a predominantly white community makes most white people in this day and age feel inferior to the point where they argue against us when we speak truth. So what happens is we get louder and louder. This is why they kill us. This is why Martin Luther King, this is why we're dead, because we speak loud. Now let me explain something to y'all about this thing that I've been talking about, because I hate these long intros. I done did a 50-minute intro to what this is, man. But for those of you who have kept up, this thing that it had several names. Okay? The main name that they call it, which I hate to call it because in this society, people hear a certain word and will relegate it, will relate it to something that it shouldn't be related to. But the word they're using for this thing, this psychological, new age psychological warfare, is gang stalking. The other names are community harassment, community mobbing, community stalking. This is on and offline, people. This is what they do now. And it doesn't have to be the government. It doesn't have to be, some higher power that be. Although when this situation does happen among smaller people, they can reach people in higher places and will make your targeting worse. Basically what you are called if you are in a position of being community harassed or community mobbed is called a targeted individual. This is what they call us, people. Targeted individuals. People who are being targeted in the communities that they once resided in or came from or still are around in for a certain type of psychological harm. And so people are no longer coming at you like they did before the internet and having a problem with you. They are doing things psychologically to you. This is called anything from body language right down to their tone of voice towards you. This is why they're creating laws against what they now call reaction abuse. Reaction abuse is when someone targets you a certain way that gets a reaction out of you, but the same people had a certain power to consequence you. Or someone is connected to someone who has the power to consequence you, and thus putting off an event that will cause a bad reaction so that they can contact the people who have the power over you to consequence you. This is called reaction abuse, people. I went through a lot of this in the homeless shelters for 20 years. For those of you who don't know my history, I was homeless for almost 20 years. I went through a lot. This is why I'm a fighter and speak for the people. I went through a lot. And now that I'm rising, I get 10 times worse. People hate me. I can't even go to the community I started all of this in without people rolling their eyes at me, pretending they don't see me. I have body cam footage that I will be releasing soon in the town of LaGrange, Illinois. How they treat outspoken black people who are only trying to do the right thing for a lost community that doesn't realize anything about itself. They hate it when the one inferior person in their community that should be inferior, that should be the virus of the community, is the one who's telling the truth. They start hating that. They want you to shut up. They want you to stop speaking. So they find ways to use things like the trespass law, which is becoming the new Jim Crow law, which is what I'm going to be getting into in the next segment. They use things like this to excuse the fact that you are telling too much truth that their consciousness knows is the truth, but cannot bear in the open public, because it's almost like making someone hold a mirror up to themselves, or you holding the mirror up to them. And people don't like that. So instead of taking responsibility and looking at their own man in the mirror and saying, hey, I didn't realize I was like this, Just like when people see themselves on camera and go, hey, I didn't realize I walked like that. Man, I gotta change that. Instead, what they do is you hold that mirror up and they're gonna do everything to punch through that mirror just to hit you in the face. So now they're creating this new game of psychological warfare where they want to flip their insecurities back on you and say that there's something wrong with you. And when they can't get to you, they will turn literally to other people around you, even especially the people that respect you, and tell them negative things about you from their personal opinion, and get other people to turn against you based off of what they heard. People who have probably never heard about you in any negative light, those people are going to be the ones to put the negative light, put that negative card there. And again, I'm speaking from personal experience from a situation I'm going through at this moment, where the smear campaigns happen and everybody's pretending like they don't know what's going on. Every time you come around, they're in their cell phones, texting each other. Oh my God, he's here again. What is he doing here? This and that and the other thing. People going online on your Facebook, reaching out to your friend base on your Facebook, telling them negative stories about you so that they delete you and you don't know what's going on, why your fan base or your friend base is dropping. This is the new game, and you have the internet to thank for it. In the 90s, you had to confront somebody on their BS, man. You had to really be like, yo, you got a problem? Speak that. Nowadays, you can just go online and be some internet thug. It's too easy to smear campaign on the internet. And the same people that are smear campaigning you, they ain't telling them same people that smear campaigning you too. Nobody's telling you nothing. And meanwhile, what's happening? See, what people do is they're very good at sharing negative and especially untrue stories about you. These little sob stories. And I mean so good, 9 times out of 10, you're ending up losing friends out of nowhere, losing a job out of nowhere, losing family members out of nowhere, all because they behind your back making the crap sound so good. You feel me? They making it sound so well placed, like they literally sat in their rooms for a day and thought the whole thing out. This is how bad it's getting with people. And then they make the plan to carry it out the next day. So that when they raise this temper out of you, since they didn't, because they out there already telling people you crazy. They already out there telling people, you know, you're angry, you're mad because of this, you're mad because you didn't succeed at that, you're mad at this and that. When the truth is, you out there angry because of the stuff they did to you. So they already got you depicted as this crazy person to other people. Then they go around having them and other people create events around you to get a reaction out of you that would not be just to your reputation. And then once they get that anger out of you in public, it's perfect for them because all the shit they did to you, now they can make sure none of that gets out there. They're gonna make sure that nobody knows all the times they made you cry, all the times they made you, in my particular case, cut myself. I got the scars all over my arm to prove what this town made me feel like. They're gonna make sure that none of that gets out there because they want you to look like a crazy person. They want you to look like nothing happened and you just got angry. So they're gonna hide everything they did to you. And that's the oldest trick in the freaking book. You understand? So that you got, next thing you know, you got an entire community of people attacking you. You woke up one day and had no idea that the internet, they were doing all of this on their cell phones. They had this whole thing planned. Lies ruin your life. These people are sick nowadays. This Gen Z, this era now is sick. They do not mind people. I got to a point where I made sure they couldn't get to me, right? when they knew they couldn't get to me to a certain extent, they started snooping around online trying to figure out background stuff. They swore that these rumors about me were true. Rumors I don't even want to talk about. But they swore that these things were true. So they started trying to find information. What they found was my mother's house and her address. So they figured they used that because they assumed I lived there. And they had already had people depicting me as this horrible person committing heinous acts amongst the youth specifically. And I don't want to get into this shit. And so what they did was they went into multiple group chats and put my mother's address online and put her whole entire picture of her house online, so that all these strange people all over these group chats on the internet would know where my family lives, assuming I live there. Hey, come get this horrible person because he did this and did that. 2 weeks later, my mother's calling my house saying that people are banging on her door trying to get through it. That became war. Now you put my family in danger over lies. Lies. Understand something, family. You may think it's a little white lie, but these little white lies destroy lives. White lies can destroy lives. I'm gonna say it again. White lies can destroy lives. Alright? Let's be realistic. Community mobbing. What, again, I've seen a lot, especially my brothers and sisters, going through this. Having their reputations, their lives ruined. Multiple groups of people from several communities. I got witnesses, people. There are so many people involved with my smear campaign. There's not a day that I don't walk outside my door and see people laughing at me. I had witnesses that saw multiple groups of people looking at me, laughing, smiling, joking, talking trash. Until the police came one night and these two witnesses had to tell them there was a lot of people that he never even met driving past in their cars, taunting him. Once you've become internet popular, you don't know who knows who you are. And this is what shows me that a lot of people on the outside looking in don't even know that I got pretty damn popular from my music. That I'm a musician. A lot of people out here think I'm crazy, that I'm not actually a musician, that I'm not doing this and that I'm not a musician. But when you get popular online for music, this is the kind of shit that comes with it. But I never thought it would get this bad. I never thought my family would end up being people who had nothing to do with nothing would be involved in this situation. See? Y'all have to be careful, because if you are a truth giver, if you are rising, this has nothing to just do with black people. This is going to happen to a lot of people who are truth tellers, truth givers. Again, shout outs to the truth givers, the truth seekers, man. The ones who are really putting out themselves for what's right, sacrificing anything, everything for what's right, to tell the people the truth about what's happening. Because this stuff that's happening to me, if you are out here trying to do the right thing and expose it, you're next. If you're trying to go out of your way to really put out the truth, you're next. Your own community is going to turn on you the same way they did me. That being said, let me finalize it with this. And I want, because a lot of people that are listening to this right now know I live in LaGrange, Illinois. That I once lived here from 2004 all the way to about 2014. I lived in LaGrange. And to this day, in the new generation of LaGrange, because most of the people I knew living in LaGrange, they don't live here no more. They didn't like LaGrange. They didn't like what it became. I talked to them online. They don't like what LaGrange became. They moved. But let me tell the people right now who are listening in LaGrange, I'm going to make this very loud and clear. And I'm going to only say this one time on this podcast. And after I state this, you owe me my respect. LaGrange, Illinois, you owe me an apology for everything you have destroyed that I built. With that being said, let me tell y'all something, man. I started my revolutionary journey in LaGrange in 2004. I lived at a place called the YMCA. So a lot of y'all who know those towers that are across the street from that McDonald's, those of you who live there know what I'm talking about. That used to be the YMCA. At that time, LaGrange was one of the most unacceptably racist communities. So racist to the point that one side of LaGrange had all white people, and the other side of LaGrange across the tracks, literally across these train tracks, had nothing but black people. And when I first came to LaGrange, people were scared of me. The cops would stop me on a daily, almost every other day, every 1 or 2 other days. Every time I would come out of my place, they would pull me over and tell cockamamie stupid stories like, oh, we saw you in the middle of a drug deal with this person. And every other day when I first came to LaGrange, this is what the cops were on with me. Because it wasn't a lot, there weren't hardly no brothers coming to LaGrange in 2004. And when I finally caught wind that there was another side of LaGrange across the tracks with all brothers, I started kind of shifting over there to see what was going on. But a lot of people at that time was telling me, oh, you know, especially a lot of the white folks that I had gotten to know in LaGrange, oh, you don't want to go over there. Them dudes, man, yeah, bro, like they gangbangers. They this and that and the other thing. And me being black, I know that white people stereotype. You might not know shit about what's going on across the tracks because you ain't never been over there. Or you heard something, or you had a bad experience because you don't understand the culture and how to be careful. So once I found out that there was the black neighborhood side of LaGrange, I started going there and talking to them. And they were kind of on a similar level. They were like, oh, those white people, you know, why are you living over there? You living around them white people and this and that and the other thing. Now me, explain something to y'all personally about a little small bit of my history. I grew up in the hood for half my life. And then the other half of my life, you know, I'm talking 5th and Quincy, 5th and St. Charles, Maywood, you know, West Side, Wild Hunter, all of that shit. I grew up around multiple different areas of the hood growing up. We didn't spend more than 2 years in most homes. So I'm always moving around. Then when my mother became a computer programmer, we started moving to predominantly white neighborhoods that were middle class, like Wheaton, Illinois. So I grew up learning both sides of the game. So me coming into LaGrange 2004, seeing this completely segregated type area where I couldn't walk the street without getting stopped by the police over complete lies almost every other day, I felt like, how can I be one to have the heart that I have and watch such a horribly segregated area and not apply my own knowledge into the understanding of both sides of this culture into both sides of the culture. So what I started doing over time as I made more white friends and stuff in LaGrange was I started schooling the white folks in LaGrange about the black side of LaGrange, about black people, period, and about black culture. While at the same time I would go across the tracks and talk to the brothers about white culture and how they live and what their standards in society are. And I got along with both sides. I could go across the tracks and talk to the brothers without them, you know, like they used to, being like, oh, you be hanging around them white people, oh, stay over there. Eventually I was let in on both sides. I started to really see things get let loose because I was loud. I was speaking. I was telling people the truth because I had the knowledge. It took a year and a half, but about a year and a half later in LaGrange, we were walking through, me and my boy Pete, I hope he's out there. I hope he's all good now. Me and my boy Pete were walking through LaGrange. We happened to notice it was interracially. Everybody was hanging out because this wasn't happening a year and a half ago until I came around and started speaking. We saw this and Pete whispered to me. He was like, bro, you did this. You're the one that talked to all these people when everybody else was afraid to. You made this happen. And it finally clicked in my mind, the exact goal that I thought wouldn't actually happen, that I couldn't do in that town, that small town, actually happened. And this white boy was the first one as we looked around that Saturday night when it was just popping in LaGrange that night. Everybody was out. Back then, everybody would be out in LaGrange. It was crowded in LaGrange back then. It was always popping. But he helped me realize, like, yo, it's brothers, it's Mexicans, it's white people. Ain't nobody saying shit about nothing no more. He was like, bro, you made this integration happen, bro. But he was the one out of many who might have realized it but didn't tell me. He was like the one person that realized it. To this day, those people no longer appear in LaGrange because they didn't like what was becoming of LaGrange come like 2010, when the Facebook era began. Now to this day, a lot of these people in LaGrange will ask me, why do you always come to the community? Why do you always come back? Why do you always come back? You move, but then why do you always visit? Why do you always come back? First of all, there are a lot of frequent visitors every day in LaGrange. They do the same things I do. They go to the park, they sit down, they chill, they use their laptops, they go to Starbucks, they go eat at restaurants, they go to the library. Every single day. They also so happen to be white in your predominantly white community. Here, the one black guy who's been in LaGrange, who lived in LaGrange, who made a solid change to this community that still goes unrecognized, will not be in the news anytime soon, does the same thing, but they have to poke at me and say, why do you come back? I'm curious as to why you're so curious as to why I come back. Remember that part of the movie Django, where the guy asked him why he was so curious and about I forgot what it was, why he was so curious about, I guess, what they call nigga fights. And Jamie Foxx, character Django says, I'm curious as to why you so curious. Because that's suspicion to me. You're not asking none of these other white folks why they come around every single day. But constantly I'm come up to so many people and ask this question. What they do is they try to add, they talk to me for a little bit. They want to pretend like they're trying to be my friend. Then the big question always comes up every time. Well, why do you come around? And I never asked them that. So what's your real motive for asking me that question but not asking all these other these nice Caucasian folks that? People, you have to understand that whether subconscious or not, racism exists. You need to start looking in your own mirror's reflection deeper. Because you come out here subconsciously acting and talking in a way that you don't even realize. I guarantee you, if someone puts a camera to your face, you'll see it and you'll be embarrassed. You never know. There's a song that says specifically, you never know just how you look in other people's eyes. And this is why I believe they trend, hey, you shouldn't care what other people think. In the age of capitalism and racism, you better care. We're getting killed. We're getting destroyed. Our reputations are at stake constantly. We're just trying to fit. You better start caring. Because until you start caring, we have no choice but to think, this is discriminatory, this is just judgment, or this is racism, or we have nothing to think that you're just singling this person out because he's a little different. Different used to mean better. Different used to mean special. Now you fear different. You fear what you don't understand. A spider on the wall might not even be poisonous, but you fear it because you don't understand that, so you'll kill it. Do you get what I'm saying? We're not thinking before we react. We're not thinking before we're moving. We're just following along with what everyone else is doing or saying. And so when somebody who's different from that comes along, instead of us taking responsibility and saying, hey, he's a little different, but he's actually rather harmless aside from what I've heard, let me go talk to this person and get to know him a little better like some have done. We decide we're going to fear that person because he's different. He thinks in a different way. He's outspoken. He's louder. He must be a menace. He must be dangerous. And then his history. He used to be poor. He used to be this. And then you still see this person from his past on top of it. People, this is why community mobbing is existent. They want to destroy the people who are free and willing to be content with their lives enough to teach you the truth that you should be happy with what you have and you should not go along with what everybody else thinks you should have by now in society. It's not even easy for you to get it wasn't easy for me to get off of being homeless for after 20 years. It was almost impossible to get a home by myself. But in that process, I found out truths about corporate society. I found out truths about how corrupt the homeless organizations are. And we're getting into all of this. We're getting into all of this on Talk 1000, baby. This is why I called it Talk 1000. Because we going past keeping it 100. We going into the gritty stuff that everybody wants to hear about, but don't nobody want to really speak on because they're scared or don't really understand it that well. I've been through too much pain. I lost too many people. I lost too much. When they already got you pegged out as a horrible person or something bad, you have nothing left to lose. What do you have to lie about anymore? Whether you're a liar or telling the truth, they already got you depicted as this horrible person. So you might as well tell the people the truth. At least on my deathbed, when I'm dying or dead, by that time, all of this is going to be exposed as the truth. It's just too bad I'll probably be dead when they finally realize it was all real. You know those movies where the crazy guy is always the one who was outspoken, always the loudest, always the one saying they're coming, and then towards the end it actually happened? Those movies send that message, man. It's always the quote-unquote crazy person that knew the most. Albert Einstein was crazy too. Wright brothers, all these people were crazy too. Stop repeating history by not paying full attention. When you hear somebody who's outspoken, who seems to, and they say he's crazy, stick by that person. Because you're doing the one thing that throughout history people ain't did. That means you're going to help make the difference along next to that person. That Alice in Wonderland movie where he says, where the mother says she's crazy or the aunt says she's crazy, and that Mad Hatter guy or whatever, whoever that guy was like, hey, but those are the craziest, but those are the most special ones. See, because you don't also realize the crazy ones are the ones that you stay away from and you think they're crazy, but in times of war, in times when you need someone with that warrior status, those are the ones you usually end up coming to, ain't they? The ones that wasn't afraid. The ones that was fearless that you thought were crazy. No, they were fearless. They was telling the truth. Just because the other people around you wouldn't tell that truth doesn't mean that they're crazy. Because 9 times out of 10, the people that hearing that truth, that they already knew the truth and didn't say it. So the podcasters are winning now. We're saying out loud what a lot of y'all have been thinking, but too afraid to speak on because you didn't want people to think, you were crazy. You were questioning yourself. Am I crazy? You ain't crazy. You're just scared. You're just scared to be the first one to say it. People are afraid to do something until they see somebody else doing that shit first. Once this podcast really gets out there, watch how many people start standing. We're going to have a new era of independent warriors against a societal order that wants you to shut up and follow along or be destroyed. You're already going to be destroyed. You're already an expendable person in this country. Look, we get nuked. The politicians, the famous people, they already got like special bunkers for them. Underground. There's already a shadow government, as they call it. Pre-made. You think they care about you? You think you're sitting in a position where, well, if we get nuked, then nobody wins. No. We get nuked, that's the end of us. We're the everyday people. The politicians, the presidents, the ones that's in the bunkers, they're the ones that are going to start the new world. And I believe that's what the new world order is. And they're starting off with things like community mobbing because they want to control you. When you're an outspoken person, they use people within your community. They will contact people and say, hey, keep this person in line. Create this event around this person. Make them feel a certain way. Get them to react a certain way. But don't tell them why you're doing it. And they got you running from one foot, thinking you're a horrible person when you're not. These people are trying to stop your confidence. They're out there spying on your Facebook, trying to get information. They're getting the information. Especially if you're an artist, a musician, you can't make your shit private, because then how does anybody know you? Now you're stuck having to make multiple Facebooks, multiple Twitters and shit like this, just to protect yourself from these community mobbers on and offline. Because they're gonna destroy your life. Just like they tried to do mine. But don't know, the war's not over. I'm literally showing people who are going through this how to invest the time and energy to really fight back. This community mobbing thing is going to happen to a lot of people. Smear campaigning that spans from one community to the other, to the point that multiple groups of people are in on a secret against you, that you become viral in a way that you never knew, based off of lies and rumors that no one ever came to you and said, hey bro, this is happening, did you know about it? This is what I only had one person come to me and show me what was going on, and showed me what they were saying, showed me the stuff on my Snapchats that they were showing people, and I had to straighten out the stories and show people, like, be careful about shit, people. One of the things you need to be careful about, a lot of people will see your Snapchat stories, you might do something a little crazy on purpose, you might be acting. They can snap and snippet that story and say anything they want about that small little snippet of you acting, and say, oh, you went crazy that day because you killed somebody. And people will believe it because they're only seeing the snippet, and they're only reaching out to people who don't even have you on Snapchat. These are the things that make community harassment and community mobbing so dangerous, because these are the things in the background that have caused a lot of school shootings, a lot of mass shootings, period, a lot of suicides, especially amongst teens. The internet is the cause of that, guys. Again, I always reflect back to the internet for this shit, because it makes it too much easier for society to destroy itself from within itself. Do you understand where I'm coming from? If we don't start pushing these subjects forward and becoming aware of our surroundings and ourselves, it's over. This is going to go beyond anything we could imagine World War III could have been. Because we got all this technology now. It's going to go nuts. And then we got all these nukes. It's going to go nuts. It's going to go beyond anything you thought. We got to wake up. We got to maintain order. We got to maintain unity. All I'm doing is trying to find ways through this podcast, through my upcoming film, through my music, to help you understand why the unity is needed now more than we ever thought it was in the 90s or 80s or 70s. It ain't a fucking joke anymore, guys. generation to generation, this generation, we just saw Tupac's murder. This is the era where we just saw Tupac's murder. It's all getting out there now. It ain't a joke. It's gonna get very extremely real. More real than at the age of 43. I never thought things could get this real. Not even as a kid when we knew shit was gonna get bad. I didn't think it would come down to this. Nobody could have predicted it. That's why we need to start waking up more than ever now. Out of this societal matrix. Because the devil's winning. We're failing. People think they're winning. You're failing. Not now, but in the future, you're failing. If you keep thinking only on what's here and now, if you keep thinking only on what's in the present, every obstacle in your future, you're going to be blinded to. And you're going to stumble over every last one of them. Until you hit that thin ice at the bottom, and the devil is waiting for you underneath it. That ice is going to melt on top of you, and it's going to evaporate in the pits of fire that you are in. And you're going to evaporate with it. Humanity is on its way out the door. And this new societal order is kicking its way in as we speak. Be smart or die. Real Talk 1000 Podcast Radio. The revolution will no longer be televised. It will now be heard.